So good afternoon and welcome to our session today. Today we're going to be covering standards-based learning in Canvas. My name is Deshira Jackson and I am a principal learning consultant here at Instructure, which is the parent company of Canvas. So in our session today, we're going to cover a couple different things. We're going to talk about what Canvas outcomes are, how they relate to standards-based grading. Then we'll talk about the different ways that you can use outcomes inside of your Canvas course. So we'll talk about rubrics. We'll talk about what's called the Learning Mastery Gradebook, what that looks like, and then different ways that you can assess your students inside your course level using assignments, discussions, or one of our two quizzing tools. So the first question we have is just, what do you know about Canvas outcomes? Anything that you've heard about it, and you can feel free to unmute or pop that in the chat. Yep, you can map them to assignments, absolutely. And so with that, got that, assignments, perfect. Yeah, so outcomes can be used in a number of different ways in your course. They can be used to track, student competency. They can be used to track program level outcomes. There's multiple ways that they can be used inside of your courses. And so outcomes are simply like your standards. They could be your SLOs, PLOs, if you have institution level outcomes, all of those would fall under to that umbrella of outcomes in Canvas. And inside of Canvas, there's a number of ways that we can add these in and manage them. And we're going to go through what exactly that looks like. So the first thing is that outcomes can be added directly to your Canvas course if you want to track your students' mastery or progression throughout your different learning activities that you provide to them. So outcomes can be added in two different ways. One way is imported through a CSV file, and then the second way is that they can be added in manually. And once you add in your outcomes, you have the ability either on the spreadsheet or prior to adding them manually to create groups. Groups are similar to folders. So if you have multiple learning outcomes that will be used for different purposes, maybe you'd have a group for program level outcomes, and maybe you have a group for course level outcomes, you could create that grouping or folder structure inside of your Canvas course. Whenever you go in to add in your outcomes, you'll see a couple of different things. So I'm going to open up a Canvas course now just to show you exactly where you would go and how that process works. So I'm going to go to outcomes, and you'll see a view similar to this. In my demo environment, I've already imported or added some in, but you'll see that option there to create a new group. If you wanted to create basically a folder grouping structure, you would do that. You'll see the option here to click import. There is a file format, so there's a specific format that needs to be there. So if you click on this link, this will tell you exactly the column headers, what items are required, as well as what information would need to be in the different columns in order for this import to work properly. What's great about the imports into outcomes is that you'll get an email and it'll let you know if it was successful or if there were any errors, and it'll let you know the line number that the error was on, as well as what the error is. So if there's an error, they will not import. So what it'll do is it won't not import the whole sheet, it'll skip to the row that it can import. And then for those of you that are just joining, hello. We're just talking about how you can add in outcomes into your Canvas courses. And then further down the line, you also have the ability to use the option for find. So if your program or your department decides to add in outcomes for you to use inside of your Canvas courses, you'll simply click find and you'll be able to see any of those that have been uploaded by your department chairs or your leaders or your admins to pull inside of your Canvas course. And then our last option is that manual option. So the first thing you'll put in is what is the name of that standard or outcome. This is really important, the naming convention, because when it comes to the reporting options inside of Canvas, the only thing that will really surface up about the outcome is the name of itself, not any details. Not necessarily any details specific. There are some things that you can do, and I'll show you that later, but it's really important that the name is as specific as possible so that when you do pull reporting or pass that on to others, they understand what was being assessed. You also have the option to put in a friendly name. So this would be something like if your outcomes are like 1.A.B.C, a very long kind of type of naming convention, you can put in something friendly that is easier for you to identify as you're adding these outcomes to the different learning activities in your course. Here you're going to put in a description. The description is basically what is being assessed. To give some detail and insight. This description will show up and be student facing, but when we talk about adding group outcomes to assignments, they'll be added to rubrics. So this would be something that is student facing. So make it as clear, as concise as possible so students get an understanding of what they're being assessed on. Down here, you have the ability, and it says friendly description for parents or students. Obviously, your higher eds, you don't have that observer or parent role. This would only be displayed to students. So you can also put in a friendly name for your students that's easy for them to understand what they're being assessed on. Down here, we have proficiency ratings. So you have the ability to customize this on a per outcome basis. And I know some of you on the call are admins. If you wanted to, you could turn this on at the account level and make it the same for everyone. If not, if you allow them to add in outcomes at the course level, they can add or remove any proficiency ratings, as well as change the descriptors for the different ratings. The default is a 0 through 4 scale, and mastery is set at 3. As long as the student gets 3 and higher, they have achieved mastery, but you can definitely, delete things out, and change the name as well as the point value. 0 through 4 is the default, but I've also seen 0 through 5. It doesn't matter, what convention you'd like to use. You have that flexibility here to change that, as well as add additional, because I know some people may need 4 to 5 versus 3 proficiency levels. Then down here, you'll choose the calculation method. And what I like about this new update is as you click on the different methods, it's going to give you an example of what that is, as well as how it is calculated. So it'll also give you kind of examples of, okay, these are the scores the student received, and this is how we calculate that final score. So the first one is decaying average. Decaying average essentially weights the most recent attempt of that assignment at a higher weight than the previous attempts. So the default is 65%. So the most recent submission or assessment of this outcome would be weighted at 65%, and all the previous attempts would be weighted at 35. You can change this number here. So if you want to change it to 70%, 80, or whatever a number you'd like to change it to, you have that flexibility here. Number of times is basically students have to be assessed and achieve mastery X amount of times in order for it to calculate the final score. So the default is 5. You can change that to 3 or 2 if you want to assess students basically multiple times on the same outcome and then get almost like an average basically of all of those attempts, and that determines mastery for that particular outcome. You have the most recent score. So whatever the most recent assessment of that outcome is, that is where students are at mastery in that time. This is probably the most common one used, especially if you have courses where maybe you're only going to use this one time, then whatever that submission is or the grade on that particular submission, that's going to dictate mastery. Then we have the highest score. So no matter how many different attempts that there are, the highest score will be used to calculate mastery. And then the final one we have is average, which is the newest one that we have. And it's basically normal average. It calculates the sum of all of the attempts divided by the number of attempts, and that would be what the final score is for mastery. What's great about these calculation methods is you can change this on a per outcome basis, but I would recommend to try to keep it consistent as much as possible, especially in one course. So you can make sure that the calculations are accurate and you're making sure that students are truly meeting mastery on those different objectives. And then the last thing down here is it's going to ask you, where do you want this to live? And this is where those groupings come into play. So you can either choose a group that you've already made. If this is your first time doing it, you can create a group and put it in that particular folder, and then you click create. Okay. All of this information is also going to be on that CSV spreadsheet. So you'd fill it in on the CSV and then import it in that way. So I'm going to just pause just to see, are there any questions about creating it manually, importing or finding, or any of those different calculation methods? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So now that we've learned how outcomes are added into Canvas, let's take a look at how you can use them inside of your courses. So the first way to use it is going to be on rubrics. And so rubrics can be used in a couple of different ways. You can create institution or account level rubrics and instructors can pull them in, or instructors have the ability to create their own rubrics directly at their course level. What's great about rubrics inside of Canvas, they can be used on assignments, graded discussions, as well as quizzes. Now on quizzes, they're not going to be there to inform the grade. They can be there to determine mastery, as well as if you wanted to have a rubric to show expectations for like a file upload, essay, or short answer question. You can use rubrics in that way on quizzes, classic quizzes. Rubrics can also be used in a combination. So if instructors have rubrics that they've already created that are there for just grading purposes, outcomes can also be added onto those rubrics. And outcomes can be added onto rubrics in one or two ways. They can be added as a part of the scoring criteria. So you can add an outcome and that will impact the overall score, or you have the ability to add an outcome and just add it there to track for mastery purposes. So whenever an outcome is added to a rubric, I'm going to show you this in a moment, there is going to be this checkbox right here that says use criterion for scoring. It is going to be checked by default. So if that's added to the rubric, it's going to be used to inform the grading for the traditional gradebook, for the traditional, number letter grade, as well as push the results from mastery to what we call the learning mastery gradebook. If it's added there and you uncheck this box, it is only going to be there for mastery tracking purposes. So you could absolutely have a rubric that's a combination of grading plus outcomes, that don't inform the score, or just a rubric with outcomes that don't inform the score. You have the variety of ways that you can utilize it. And what's great about rubrics in Canvas is once you create it once, it's attached to you as a user. So you can create it in one course and go into another one and click find and attach that to assignments. Or if you click copy to, it should also take the rubric as well. So if you're copying content over like an assignment or graded discussion or anything and a rubric's attached, it should copy that over as well. So I'm going to go into my Canvas course just to show you both of these options, just to make sure we have a full scope of understanding on it. So in order to add rubrics, there's a couple different ways to do this. So I'm going to show you assignments first. Okay, so if you click on the name of the assignment and you get to the assignment detail page and you're not in edit mode, you'll see at the bottom left, there's plus rubric. So when you click on that, you'll see it'll automatically do some rubric. So you'll change the name to whatever the name of that rubric needs to be. If it's a specific rubric for an assignment, change the name of whatever would make sense for you as an instructor. And then you have this first field right here, which is kind of a placeholder where you'll start entering your criteria as well as your ratings. So the different scoring levels. You can either delete this out and add a new one, or you can just click edit, and put in like the description of what the criterion is and what you're going to be looking for. And as you go through ratings, you have the ability to change the score, put a specific title and give it a description, and you can add additional ratings as needed. So if you need more, you can absolutely add those. So when it comes to adding in an outcome, we'll click Find Outcome. And I'm going to choose just one example one. So this example, I'm going to leave it to use this criterion for scoring checked. And so I'm going to click Import, and it adds it to the rubric. And if you notice down here, my total is now 10 points. So that means that, yes, this will be used to track mastery, but it will also be used to determine the calculation of the score. Now let's do another one. And we're going to uncheck that box and click Import. And you'll see, although this is 15 points total, you'll see that the total hasn't changed to 15, it's still 10. So this one here would only be there to track for mastery. When you go into SpeedGrader to grade students and give them feedback, you'll have the option to give them, click on the scores, the tile scores individually to calculate their grade, and also to click on it for the mastery. You also will have the ability to go in and use each criterion has a little box where you can leave a comment for each row on the rubric. And you can also do that for the if you add outcomes on the rubric. Some things to think about with rubrics in Canvas is at the moment, we don't have like a way for you to import it from like a CSV or Word document. So you will probably have to build them out, but you only have to do it one time. Once a rubric is, used on an assessment, it won't let you change it, but it will let you make a copy. So if you have rubrics that you use and you've graded students and you want to make updates or changes, it'll automatically force a copy, and then you can use that going forward. And then also I would encourage you to take some time to look at the things down here. Sure, Sabrina. The question was, can I explain why the second outcome does not tally in a total? Sure. So on this option, I unchecked that box. So it's not going to be used to calculate the grade. It's just going to be there to calculate mastery. So when you uncheck that box, it'll add it to the rubric, but it will not increase the value of what the rubric is. No worries. Perfect. But take a look at these settings as well. There's some great settings on here. The main one that's really important that I want to point out, so you can use this in SpeedGrader and click on the tiles, is make sure you check use this rubric for assignment grading. That way, as you click the numbers on the rubric, it'll automatically calculate the score and put it into that grade box for you. If you don't check that, then it will not, and you will have to manually type it in. So that's something important to think about. You also have, I know some schools or some instructors like to remove the kind of ratings, and they just want to write free form comments and give them a manual score. You can do that, but you can also override whatever the point value is whenever you go into SpeedGrader as well if you needed to. So you just click create a rubric, and then I'm going to show you really quickly in SpeedGrader what this looks like. Essentially, if a student had submitted, their submission would be on the left-hand side, and I could click view rubric, and I can just click in here what the score is for that particular criterion. If I want to leave comment for the student for that specific criterion, I click this comment box and give them feedback there, and I can do it for kind of everything here. So I love that part of rubrics in Canvas. I'm going to pause just to see, are there any questions about adding the rubric, adding outcomes to the rubric, whether scoring or graded or ungraded, or any questions about anything I've shown? Oh, perfect. Awesome. All right. So that's how you add it to an assignment. If you're going to go through quizzes, if you go into classic quizzes, you'll click, and the way you know if it's a classic quiz versus a new quiz, I'm not sure if you have them both turned on. The little rocket ship, if it's outlined, that's a classic quiz. If it's filled in, then that's a new quiz. So you'll click the name to get to the quizzing detail page. You'll click the three dots and of our, and click show rubric, and then you can add a rubric in the same way. So you can add those outcomes there as well. And again, remember, rubrics added on quizzes are not going to be used for grading. It's more there for like mastery or for like setting up expectations for your students. And new quizzes, you'll have the same option. It looks very similar to the assignments page to click add rubric there. So you can add it on any of those different things. Okay. Now, when it comes to using outcomes on quizzes, there's a couple different, there's a little bit of a different way that you can do it. So if you're using classic quizzes, you will add the outcomes to your question bank. So if you have question banks from publishers or from your textbooks or things that you've created previously, you will go in and add the question banks there. And so let me show you very quickly how to get to it. You go to quizzes. At the top right, you'll see the three dots and you'll click manage question banks. So this is where all your question banks will live. If you haven't created any and you've been creating classic quizzes, we do have something that's called unfiled question bank, where it banks all of your questions together for you, and you can move them and separate them by like chapter, unit, topic, whatever makes sense for your course. And you can use those later if you want to do like randomization questions or something like that. But let me show you on a question bank how you add them. So you'll click on the name of the question bank, and on the right-hand side, you can align an outcome. Okay. Once you align an outcome, it's going to ask you to set mastery for the score. And this is basically saying all the questions in this bank, students need to get at least 60% more or more correct in order to show mastery for these outcomes. With classic quizzes, you know, it's going to be to the bank. So unless you have, if you have your questions banked in a way where you could align one outcome, then that'll work a little bit better than just putting multiple outcomes to a bank. It'll be hard to, it's not going to map to show you like, okay, question 5 goes to this particular outcome. So that's something to think about, you know, if you're using classic quizzes with outcomes. You also have the ability to use classic quizzes, to use outcomes with new quizzes. And this was just announced probably a day or two ago. Previously with new quizzes, they did not push the results up to the Learning Mastery Gradebook or any account level reports or anything like that. Everything lived attached to that individual quiz. Right now, it is in beta. So they're testing that out, and it looks like it's going to be in production, I believe, on, basically it's going to be live to where this will work properly on, I believe, the 19th. Hang on, I'm just checking my notes. I think it's like the 19th. No, here we go, the 9th. So at the moment, it doesn't push up to the Learning Mastery Gradebook, but going forward after that time, it will. And what's great about new quizzes is that you can align outcomes to the question, to the overall quiz, as well as to item banks, which are the same as question banks, but they're tied to new quizzes. So if you go in and you build a new quiz, I'm just going to click edit on this. At the bottom, you have the option to align an outcome directly to a question. So you'll do that in that way, or you can align it up here to the quiz overall, as well as to the item bank. So you have some flexibility on how you're going to use that and how the results will all push up to that Learning Mastery Gradebook. But keep in mind, since this is a newer thing that hasn't been pushed out yet, I don't think it's going to be retroactive. So this might be something to look at for maybe spring going forward, or after it's in our live kind of production environment. So that is brand new. Yeah. And also, just in case you haven't heard, we are no longer have a depreciation or end of life right now for classic quizzes. So both tools will still be available. Previously, I think it was June 2024 for classic quizzes end of life. That has been removed, and it still will be, you know, supported. I just don't think they'll make any updates, I think, to it. And then they're still going to continue with making the updates to new quizzes to make sure it's kind of, I guess, one-to-one with classic quizzes. So if you haven't seen the differences between the two, you definitely now have a choice of which ones you want to use, and you can use both in a course. I mean, I have used classic quizzes for like quick, quick quizzes or practice quizzes, like short things. And I've used new quizzes for like more of my heavy assessments, just because I really like the reporting and moderate option a little bit better in new quiz. So you explore that, or, explore that with your faculty members so they can make a decision that works best for, that particular course. Any questions about new quizzes or classic quizzes, any of that? And then I'll show you really quickly. Let me just return to my course on discussions. So it don't need to be a graded discussion, but you can also add a rubric there as well. Okay, you'll be sticking with classic quizzes for a while. Okay, perfect. So if you click on the name, again, all of them, you're going to click on the name of the assignment, quiz, or discussion to get to that detail page. Click the three dots, and then similar to the quizzes, you'll click show rubric, and then you can add the rubric there in the same way. Perfect. So I know you're going to stick to classic quizzes. Do you have any instructors you think that would be trying out outcomes with quizzes, or that you think that they'd probably stick mostly to like assignments? Or you're not sure? Okay. Yeah, that's pretty common. I mean, the only time I see them used on quizzes a lot is like nursing, like medical program or medical kind of programs would use them on quizzes. Great. Now that we talked about the adding outcomes, how you can use them in your Canvas course, let's walk through what it looks like to find the results. So we have a tool called the Learning Mastery Gradebook. And so I know there's some admins on the call. This is something that needs to be turned on. It's a feature option, so it would need to be turned on at the admin level in order for your instructors to view this particular gradebook. So if you're not sure if it's on or not, I'll show you how to double check it. If you go into a Canvas course, actually, that's not a good, I was already there. Go into your Canvas course and click on grades. And then under where it says gradebook, Learning Mastery should show up there to toggle between the two views. And if it's not, it probably just needs to be turned on either at the course level or at the admin level. Okay. But the Learning Mastery Gradebook is basically where all the results will go for your course, and it will show how students are doing on particular outcomes. So I'm going to open up a second example here in just a moment so I can show you that. But the layout is going to be pretty similar to the traditional gradebook. You'll have a column with all of your students' names in it. Then you will also have instead of a column with each assignment, you will have a column with each outcome, right? So it'll have if you hover over it, that's why the naming convention is important. It'll have like the name as well as a description. And then it'll also let you know the calculation method, what level mastery is set at, and all of those things as well. So let me get here's my example. So we can kind of walk through what this looks like. Okay. So I have a couple different options. The first one is going to be to hide outcomes with no results. So if I just wanted to see only where my students were assessed, I'll click this checkbox and it'll show that. At the top, you'll see the average. So this is for this course and all sections overall. If you had it cross-listed or you're allowing instructors to cross-list, they can see it by section if that's an option for their course. They can also change it to median if they don't want it to be the average. And so this first number here is what the student score was. And then this number here after the backslash is what the mastery threshold is. And so it is possible for students to earn points obviously higher than mastery. So that is how this looks. There are color tiles here that lets me know exactly kind of where my students are in terms of meeting, that mastery level. This terminology is going to be the same across all Canvas environments, but you do have some of the flexibility at the admin to kind of, if you wanted to change this overall, then you could do that as well as the colors. I have the ability to export this report as well. So if you want to export this is something that can be done and at the course level as a CSV. If you come to the time where you wanted to start adding in like program or institution level type outcomes, and you want to track things like from a program level, those will push up to a report that's available on the admin panel. So if you want more information about that, just send me an email and I can send you some more details on that. But from the instructor perspective, once they click export, they'll get a CSV. The first column will have the student's name. The second column will have the student's ID. This column right here, so you'll have to make it obviously wrap the text, but the first column is going to show the result. So very similar to that Learning Mastery Gradebook view, what the student received. And the second column is going to be the mastery level. And so both of these here are basically the name of the particular outcome or where it was assessed. You also have the ability to view individual students' mastery results as well. So if you click on that student's name, you can also go into their grades page and click on the Learning Mastery tab, and that will also show kind of individual student results if you need that. If you decide to turn this on, there's also a student view of the Learning Mastery Gradebook that allows them to see all the outcomes that have been aligned in your course. So all the ones you've pulled in, everywhere they've been aligned, and then what their individual results are. So if you turn this on, this is also something admins would need to turn on. Students would also have the ability to see kind of their individual feedback and how they've done on that particular outcome. If you have like the friendly names for under that student tab, this is where it would show up. It would show them the friendly name. And as well as like if they hover over this, then they'll see all of kind of the last time they were assessed. They'll see the calculation method. And it also gives them that brief kind of example of how it's being calculated. And so I like that because I think it gives full transparency to your students, because when you add the rubrics on or add the outcomes to rubrics, they will be able to see that. And so this would help them maybe understand it a little bit better, what is happening and what you're doing in the course. Any questions about the Learning Mastery Gradebook? All right, perfect. And so, as I said, we're making some changes now to how new quizzes kind of works in regards to reporting up. But new quizzes also has a report that's already tied to it, and it's called the outcome analysis report. And so whenever you tie outcomes to a quiz, this report will be attached to that individual quiz, and you can see the results there. So first, you'll get to see the number of outcomes aligned, and then it'll let you know the student's name as well as their overall kind of grade or what mastery level they're at. If you click on the name of the outcome, you can get more granular. It'll tell you the average score students received, where the mastery level is, what the description is, as well as the calculation method. So very similar to that Learning Mastery Gradebook where you hover over kind of the title. When you click on the name of the outcome in new quizzes, you will see this information here. And so those are two really great reports between the Learning Mastery and the outcome analysis report. Depending on what you're using, you'll get a full scope of how your students are doing. You also have, and this is something that's new, I'll have to check to make sure if this is a feature request or not. Yeah, it's not on yet. there will be a release so an update coming to Canvas, and it'll be something optional where you can show alignments. So I'm just going to go into what's called my beta instance. So this is something only admins have access to. So it's a test instance where we kind of allow schools to test things out. Once that adds in, I'll show you exactly what that looks like. But there'll be a tab that's called alignments. And so it'll show you everywhere that outcome is aligned inside of your course. Okay, so you'll see how many outcomes have been added, the number of artifacts, and then it'll show you the particular outcome. And if you click this drop down, it'll tell you what assignment or discussion or quiz where it's been aligned inside of your course. This is definitely brand new. There's also a search option. And I think that it's great because a lot of times instructors may add a lot of outcomes and maybe they're not sure everywhere that they've added it. So this takes away kind of that searching process. And yeah, that's all the three of the options. So any feedback or thoughts about rolling this out? I don't know if any of you teach, but if any of your faculty members or any questions or thoughts about outcomes.
I don't think so. I think this was a great start. Thanks to Shira for just kind of laying it all out. And now I think just kind of have to, as Marvin would say, marinate on it and, see how we can roll it out.
Yeah, worth exploring the kinds of volunteers. Absolutely. Yeah, and as you're thinking through that, if you want to pull, if you want to just leave it at the course level, then do it that way. That's totally fine. But if you at any point want to do it on a more broader department or program level, then you would need to kind of go through the admin side to add the outcomes, and your teacher or your instructors would just pull them into their courses, but they would still add them in the same way to assignments and rubrics and all of that. But if you add them in and they import them, then you can pull those account level reports. And there's some similar things like alignments and things that are available on the admin side as well. All right. Well, that is all I have right now. Okay. Perfect. Thanks for that insight, Martin. Of course. Well, if you have any other questions, and I think you all have my email, feel free to email me and I'll send over this recording shortly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.